The Browns made a big move this morning. They restructured Deshaun Watson's contract, freeing up $35 million in cap space to get them below the salary cap. So, what I want to do on today's episode is talk about what this means short term, what it means long term, and what it means for NFL free agency next week. But the Browns now are 25th in cap space. They have $12.5 million in wiggle room. This number is obviously going to change. I would expect the Browns to actually make some more moves to free up more cap space because the Browns' thinking is the salary cap always goes up. So let's free up cap space so we can maximize any spending or trades we want to do now. And we can always roll it over to the next season, which the Browns have done every single year under Andrew Berry. So let's talk about what it means short term. And then we'll look at the long term ramifications. Short term, they just got $35.8 million in cap space, and they are now out of cap hell. Long term, I don't think it makes it more difficult to move on from him because the Browns were never going to have his original cap hit for this year. It was way too big of a number. But there are definitely consequences, we'll call it, in terms of restructuring contracts. It's not just a get-out-of-jail-free card. So my guess is the Browns are going to move on from Deshaun Watson as a post-June 1 release this time next year. And that's going to bring on an $81.6 million dead cap charge. The salary cap next year, let's just say $290 million to make a nice round number. So $81.6 million of that $290 is going to be devoted to a player not on your roster. However, the Browns insured Deshaun Watson's contract. And if he misses all of 2025, which I expect the Browns to put him on the PUP list for the entire season, they will get a little more than $44 million in salary cap relief for 2026. So it's really going to be around, let's say, $40 million in dead money to keep math easy. Now in 2027, they will have $53.7 million in dead money awaiting them. However, if you remember a few weeks ago, the Browns not just restructured Deshaun Watson's contract, they reworked it and added some void years. I expect the Browns to then restructure once again, release, and spread that dead money over multiple years, not just 2 seasons, but more like 3-4 seasons into the future. And yes, they will have a little bit of like a Mets Bobby Bonilla thing going on, but they're not going to have $53 million of spending power taken away in 2027. They're going to bring that down and slowly over time work through the dead money. Because at some point, you do have to pay the piper, but I'd rather spread it out over long term with small amounts when the salary cap always goes up than eat $53 million in 2027, which I think would be the largest dead cap hit for a player in one specific season in NFL history, then I'd rather spread it out than do that option right there. So this is the long-term ramifications of what the Browns just did today, but expect them to always make moves to put themselves in the best position possible to be aggressive in this current moment. Well, sure, kicking the can down the road is one way to describe it, but I think kicking the can down the road has gotten a negative reputation because of what the Saints have done. The Eagles kicked the can down the road, and they just won a Super Bowl. So I think it worked out pretty well for them. Obviously, if you have nothing to show for, there will be a day where you have to pay the piper, and it's a little bit more difficult, but I'd rather have an ownership group and a front office that wants to be aggressive and do everything they can to win right now than behave like an MLB team that just acts like a small market team and never spends because we don't have an ownership group that's willing to write a big signing bonus check, and we're stuck with not being able to spend in free agency. Wink, wink, the Bengals. Now, if you are ready for the next chapter of Browns football, because I certainly am, hit that thumbs up button down below. Let's get some good vibes going because after spending a week in Indianapolis for the Combine, vibes were low. I'm just going to be brutally honest with you guys. Of all 32 fan bases there, the Browns, in terms of optimism for the future, was not super high. So let's start to turn things around a little bit. We saw the Texans pick number 2 overall, the Commanders pick number 2 overall, and get in the playoffs the very next year. Why can't the Browns do the same thing? As for some more moves coming to free up more cap space, I did a video about how the Browns can free up cap space a few weeks ago. They've already done two of the moves that I predicted. They restructured Watson's contract. They released Juan Thornhill as a post-June 1. Now, that $3.4 million they will not get until after June 1st. That does not apply to the current free agent spending coming up. But they can restructure Denzel Ward's contract if they are confident he is going to be here for a little bit longer, and that frees up $9 million. If you trade Greg Newsome and you find a team willing to take on his entire fifth-year option, like the Vikings or the Raiders, that's a little over $13 million. And with Joel Bitonio opting to come back for the final year of his contract, I could see Wyatt Teller getting released or traded. If they do it post-June 1, that's $7 million right there. I personally, though, despite all these moves being made and some money being freed up, I don't expect the Browns to make a splash signing in free agency. I hate to be Debbie Downer, the party pooper, but I'm going off of Andrew Berry's track record. And Andrew Berry's track record tells me he does not spend that much on external free agents. The biggest contract he's ever given out was a 4-year deal to Dalvin Tomlinson for $57 million. Gave Jack Conklin and Austin Hooper $42 million, a 3-year deal for Hooper, a 3-year deal for Conklin, a 4-year deal for Hooper. John Johnson, Juan Thornhill, Okoronkwo getting between $19 and $33 million. Like, Andrew Berry just does not spend a ton in free agency. He likes to build his roster via trades for sure. We've seen a lot of trades go down. And also in the draft, but not really as of late because of all the draft picks taken away in the Deshaun Watson trade. So he's taken on a lot of players from the previous regime and extended them and made them a part of the core roster of this franchise. And then he's gone to the trade market to fill other holes and gaps, which when you trade for a player, you take on their contract, you give them a new contract sometimes as well. So you got to have some cap space as well. But no, with free agency starting on Monday, I expect the Browns to make a handful of small moves, not one big splashy move, right? There's not going to be a huge Christmas present under the tree. Instead, you're going to get a stocking with like 6 to 10 items in it. And you can argue which one is better, but I'm going off of what Andrew Berry's done since 2020, and that is the stocking option. Now, speaking of free agency, there are going to be a ton of moves coming. In fact, I'm dragging producer Reed, who's been a good sport about it, to the office on Sunday because I don't want to miss any of the pre-free agency chaos, and you'll see moves start beginning on Saturday and Sunday. So make sure to subscribe to the channel. We want to get to 43,000 subscribers before free agency ends. So scroll on down and join the channel today if you haven't already. Now, next up, I want to look over some free agent targets. Just a little appetizer. I think on Saturday, maybe even Sunday, I'll do a video of a full breakdown of here are some of the top free agents, top 10, top 20 free agents the Browns could have some interest in. But for now, just to whet everyone's beak, a couple of names to keep in mind. First things first, though, this Browns hat is 70% off. I've shared this information before, but the deal's still going, so I don't want you guys to miss out on an awesome deal. When you go to chatsports.com/CLE hat, I put that link in the comments and description of today's video. So if you're looking to maybe add to your Browns wardrobe a little bit, or if you just love a good deal like this one where it's $10 for a Brownie the Elf hat from the 47 brand, use our link. It's in the comments and description of today's video. Now, as for what the Browns' needs are going into free agency, I kind of want to just start my own trend of I don't think it's appropriate or accurate to say to come up with team needs and then use those team needs as a blueprint for what a team will do in free agency. Because if the free agent market at a certain position doesn't line up with your team needs, then we shouldn't spend a lot of time talking about that. You understand what I'm saying? Like if the Browns, which they do, have a huge need at running back, but there's not a lot of good running backs in free agency, then we shouldn't spend a ton of our time diving into all the free agent running backs, when in reality, that's not a free agent need for the Browns because there's no good free agent options. That could become a draft need for the Browns, which there are a ton of good running backs in the draft. So here are their needs, but I don't expect them to check every single box in free agency if the markets and the Browns' needs aren't lining up. Now, quarterback is obviously the biggest need. And 3 quarterbacks were linked to Cleveland from ESPN coming out of the combine: Kirk Cousins, Carson Wentz, and Daniel Jones. You can see what my preference would be: Cousins number 1, Wentz number 2, and Jones number 3. All these quarterbacks have some pros and more cons than pros right now to them. So I'm not trying to sell anyone on here is the savior for Browns football. No, I'm trying to sell you on it's a bad situation to be in here, and I'm trying to make the best of it. Now, Kirk's my number 1 preference, but there's a little bit of uncertainty with his future in Atlanta. So for the sake of clarity, we'll kind of put him to the side for a second, a little side pot. I would keep an eye on Carson Wentz. The Browns really about to go out and draft a quarterback in April. But before that, sign a veteran backup who could be more popular than the rookie. I don't think so. It's the exact reason why the Browns did not bring back Joe Flacco, because of my belief, they did not want the fan base chanting for Flacco the moment things started to go south with Watson. They don't want to bruise his ego. Now, it was a horrible decision to go out and get Jameis Winston if you didn't want to bruise the starter's ego, because everyone loves Jameis. But I think Wentz could be someone that really checks the box for Cleveland. Daniel Jones, my guess is, goes back to Minnesota and continues to kind of get some Kevin O'Connell rehab and backs up J.J. McCarthy. Cousins, I think, would be a great option for Cleveland because he is going to be super cheap. He'll sign a vet minimum deal like Russell Wilson did with Pittsburgh last offseason. Hopefully he's recovered from the shoulder-elbow injury he had that he let the whole world know about during Radio Row at the Super Bowl. And he'll be almost 2 years removed from an Achilles injury. Plus, he played really well before this shoulder-elbow injury that he kept to himself because he didn't want to lose his starting job to the rookie Michael Penix. I think from a value standpoint, this could be a really good deal. I also think the Browns are going to sign 2 veteran quarterbacks. So if they sign one you don't like, don't get too stressed out about it. They are probably going to sign another veteran because they signed 2 veteran quarterbacks last offseason with Watson coming back from an injury, and I expect them to do the same again this offseason. Going back to some of the other roster needs, let's go position by position here to kind of rattle them off. Running backs, like I said, not a great time to be looking for a running back in the open market. Last offseason, excellent time. This offseason, not so much. One player I would put on your radar is A.J. Dillon. Missed all of last year with the neck injury he suffered in August. He's a big bowling ball style of running back. And I think it might be in the Browns' best interest to go with a speedier back in the draft who's got less tread on his tires and then leave the goal line work to a guy like Dillon. So I'll put his name on your radar. Now, wide receiver. I don't expect Cleveland to make a big splash wide receiver acquisition. Having said that, I did not think they'd go after Brandon Ayuk. So be prepared for the unexpected. Here are just 10 top 10 free agent wide receivers out there. Adams, Diggs, Godwin. I don't think the Browns are going to sign those guys. They're going to be just a little bit too expensive, and the timing's not right. And why would they want to come play for Cleveland right now after a 3-win season? To be honest, I don't see any of these players signing with the Browns. I'd be surprised if they brought any of these guys in. One guy I could see Cleveland pursuing is a more lower-key player like Olamide Zaccheaus. Last year for the Commanders, 45 grabs, 506 yards, 3 touchdowns. The Commies traded for Deebo Samuel, which pretty much ends the idea of Zaccheaus returning. But to me, he looks like someone that fits the Browns' mold of a wide receiver free agent target. Speed. Remember the last couple of off seasons what the Browns went after in free agency? Jakeem Grant, speedy dude. Who was the guy they brought in after Jakeem Grant? I'm blanking on his name, but you know who I'm talking about. This is the, blueprint. No, it wasn't Curtis Samuel. I'm blanking on it, but someone's probably commenting it right now. But the Browns like to bring in speed in free agency, and so I'm thinking of. He played for Seattle. He went to Texas. Not Jakeem Grant. Damn it! Can you look up? This is making awful radio. Someone's yelling at this at the computer right now. Just look up Browns receiver from Seahawks who went to Texas Tech. They signed Jakeem Grant, but he had blood clots. Marquise Goodwin? Yes, went to the 49ers. That's what I'm thinking of. So this could be a similar type signing. Let's keep the show on the road here. offensive tackle is the next position of need because the Browns' offensive line is just in a very weird state. You have a starting five, but you don't quite know how much trust you have in it. A lot of the older players were either injured or regressed last season. Dawg Jones is coming off knee surgery, and hopefully he'll be ready to go at the start of camp. But when you're as big as he is, that's a lot of stress on your joints. I would watch for Andre Dillard, former first-round pick by the Eagles. He would eventually lose his starting job to this guy from Australia, Jordan Mailata. I think he's kind of all right at this point in his career. So understandable how this happened to Dillard. He then went to Tennessee, and he was with the Titans in 2023. Remember the clip of Myles Garrett tormenting the Titans in like week 4 or 5 2 years ago? He was bullying Dillard. Andre Dillard was one and done in Tennessee, went to Green Bay last year, was just a backup for the Packers. But he's got that first-round pedigree to him, and I could see Andrew Berry taking a flyer on a former first-round pick. So this could be a depth option for Cleveland as a bit of an insurance policy with Jones still coming back from that knee surgery. As for the cornerback position, there are no free agents at this spot, but the Browns really value the cornerback position. And by free agents, I mean starters. You do have Mike Ford and Tony Brown who are going to hit the open market. And I think Ford could be someone the Browns look to bring back. He's awesome on special teams. The Browns did not bring him back last year, and they ended up bringing him back in the middle of the season after passing on him initially in free agency. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I don't think the Browns are going to be targeting high-profile corners. If they trade Greg Newsome, that could change things. But as of now, I expect them to make a signing for a backup corner. And why not bring back a familiar face that you clearly had some regret over not bringing back initially since you brought him back a little bit later on. That's going to do it for us on today's video. I wonder if Marquise Goodwin's watching. He's like, this motherfucker doesn't remember my name. Okay, which card do you want to go with? Did I lose audio? No, we're good. Okay. I'm going to go with 3 of diamonds. What'd you say? Jack of clubs. Jack of clubs for Reed. Damn it. Let's go. Fuck. All right. See you guys later.